March 16th, 1986. 7 prison guards eat birthday cake inside India's highest security jail. 5 minutes later, all 7 collapse, drugged. The man standing over their bodies has strangled backpackers in Thailand, burned corpses on beaches, drowned tourists in bathtubs. At least 12 dead across Asia. Now, the serpent steps over the guards, takes the keys, and walks out the front gate of Tihar prison. Within hours, every airport in India is locked down. Interpol issues a global alert. Thailand demands his head. They've waited a decade to execute him. But here's what no one understands. 3 weeks later, the most wanted man in Asia is sitting by a restaurant window in a tourist town, waiting. He doesn't run when police walk in. He smiles and holds out his wrists. Because Charles Sobhraj didn't escape to find freedom, freedom meant an execution in Thailand. The only place on earth that could save his life? The prison cell he just left. Why would escaping guarantee his execution? And how did getting caught become his only way out? January 1986. Behind Tihar's concrete walls, Charles Sobhraj lives better than half the people outside them. Guards call him Sahib, boss, master, the honorific reserved for men who command respect. At 42, he speaks French, English, Hindi, Thai, and Vietnamese with the fluency of a diplomat. He wears tailored shirts in his cell while other inmates rot in prison-issue rags. Restaurant curry arrives on ceramic plates. Cold Kingfisher beer materializes after lights out. Where other prisoners sleep on concrete slabs, Sobhraj reclines on a feather pillow. The secret isn't violence, it's economics. Gems sewn into the lining of his jacket convert to bribes faster than cash. Guards, cooks, clerks, even the warden's assistant find rupees pressed into their palms for small favors that compound into absolute privilege. Sobhraj has transformed India's most notorious prison into his personal hotel, and nobody questions the arrangement because everyone profits from it. But comfort means nothing when a death sentence waits at the gate. Sobhraj's 12-year term for drugging French tourists in 1976 expires in weeks. Release should mean relief, but for him, it means extradition, a one-way flight to Bangkok, where Thai prosecutors hold warrants for 6 murders. The victims were young Western backpackers drifting through Southeast Asia on shoestring budgets. A Dutch couple found strangled in a Bangkok apartment, an American woman burned beyond recognition on a Pattaya beach, a Canadian student whose body washed up near Phuket. The press dubbed him the Bikini Killer, for the swimwear his victims often wore when discovered. Thailand wants Sobhraj's neck stretched by rope, or his veins flooded with lethal injection. The method varies by era, but the outcome stays constant. If India releases him at sentence end, Thai officers will be waiting at Tihar's gate with handcuffs and a plane ticket to a death chamber he'll never leave. Sobhraj runs the numbers in his cell every night, scratching calculations on newspaper margins. Thai law carries a 20-year statute of limitations on murder. His earliest alleged killings date to 1975. If he can remain beyond Thailand's reach until 1995, every charge dissolves like morning fog. The noose becomes a paperweight, and the lethal injection becomes an empty threat. But his Indian sentence ends now in 1986. He needs 9 more years. 9 years the Indian government has no legal obligation to provide. The math is brutal in its simplicity. Freedom in 1986 means death in Bangkok. Prison until 1995 means survival. Release isn't salvation. It's a trapdoor to an execution chamber. For the first time in his life, Charles Sobhraj desperately wants to remain behind bars. So how do you force a country to imprison you longer when they're legally required to release you? Confessing to new crimes takes months of investigation and trials. Appeals drag through bureaucratic quicksand. Neither option delivers the immediate delay Sobhraj needs. He requires something that generates charges, headlines, and years of court proceedings all at once. Something so audacious that no prosecutor can expedite it, no judge can dismiss it, and no extradition order can leapfrog it. And then the solution arrives, elegant and insane in equal measure. Escape. Not to disappear, to get caught. Break out of Tihar, commit new felonies in the process, dominate the news cycle, then let police recapture him in spectacular fashion. Fresh charges, fresh trials, fresh years behind Indian bars while Thailand's clock bleeds towards 0. Every day India holds him is a day Thailand cannot execute him. If you think this sounds like the plot of a fever dream, you're not alone. But Charles Sobhraj has built his entire 42 years on schemes that sound impossible until they work. He strolls the exercise yard beneath the watchtower, lips curling into a private smile. The blueprint crystallizes. He'll need accomplices willing to risk everything for a promise of freedom. He'll need sedatives strong enough to drop armed guards, but weak enough to avoid manslaughter charges. He'll need a getaway vehicle, outside contacts, split-second timing. One miscalculation means a bullet in the spine or an expedited flight to Bangkok's death row. But doing nothing guarantees execution anyway. The odds favor action. The King of Tihar is about to bet his life on the most counterintuitive jailbreak ever attempted, escaping prison so he never has to leave it. What could he offer fellow inmates to make them risk their lives for a scheme they don't fully understand? And how does a prisoner stockpile enough drugs to knock out a dozen guards without anyone noticing? Every great con needs accomplices who believe they're getting a real reward. Sobhraj recruits 2 convicted heroin smugglers serving life sentences, hard men with nothing to lose and everything to gain from a shot at freedom. During yard time, he lays out the escape in whispered fragments. A diversion inside the cell block, sedatives hidden in food, a car waiting outside the main gate. The smuggler's eyes widen. Tihar is supposed to be escape-proof. 12-foot walls, armed guards, and watchtowers scanning the perimeter. But this soft-spoken man speaks as if he's already walked through the concrete. They agree without hesitation, recruiting 4 more inmates willing to risk bullets for open air. What Sobhraj doesn't mention, he has no intention of staying free. The accomplices believe they're fleeing to Nepal, new identities, fresh starts in mountain villages where Indian police can't follow. They don't know they're pawns in a scheme designed to end in headlines and handcuffs. That secret stays locked behind Sobhraj's smile. The weapon is chemistry. Over 3 months, Sobhraj accumulates sleeping pills, tranquilizers, and sedative powders through every channel available to a man with money. Diazepam arrives inside hollowed-out book spines. Barbiturates slip through in care packages labeled vitamins. A corrupt night shift guard delivers pharmaceutical-grade sedatives in exchange for enough rupees to buy a motorcycle. Alone after midnight, Sobhraj grinds tablets into fine dust, mixes ratios, and tests solubility. He needs a dose strong enough to drop a grown man in minutes, but calibrated to avoid stopping anyone's heart. A dead officer means murder charges and international outrage. Unconscious guards mean assault, exactly the kind of mid-level felonies that clog Indian courts for years. To verify the dosage, he lures a stray cat with drugged scraps. The animal collapses within 4 minutes, breathes steadily, and wakes 5 hours later unharmed. Sobhraj adjusts upward for human body weight. By early March, he possesses enough sedative powder to incapacitate a wedding party. The delivery mechanism: Indian milk sweets called burfi, dense with sugar, ghee, and saffron. The drugs dissolve invisibly into the creamy fat. Hospitality as a weapon, Sobhraj perfected this trick a decade earlier when he nearly poisoned 60 French tourists with fake dysentery pills. Now he'll use it on his jailers. He picks March 16, 1986, 3 weeks before his actual birthday. But prisons don't check calendars. Sobhraj announces a small party, a thank you to the officers who treated him well. The staff sees no threat. He's been a model prisoner, generous with gifts and friendly with everyone. What harm could come from a little party? The night before, Sobhraj sleeps soundly while his accomplices pace their cells. The getaway driver is bribed and positioned. The 6 accomplices know their roles. Act natural, eat the sweets, and then follow Sobhraj the moment guards drop. Sweets dusted with sedatives wait in a gilded box labeled "Imported from Jaipur." Dawn breaks on March 16. The most surreal birthday party in Indian prison history is about to begin. How will 7 armed guards react when they realize the man they trusted just poisoned them? March 16, 1986. Late afternoon light slants through the bars of Block B. Colored streamers hang from exposed pipes. A bedsheet banner reads, "Happy Birthday, Charlie." A bakery cake, vanilla with pink frosting, smuggled in by a guard who pocketed 200 rupees, sits on a metal stool beside plastic cups and a teapot. Sobhraj greets each guest at his cell door with folded hands and a warm smile. 5 officers crowd inside the cramped space. 2 more linger in the corridor, drawn by laughter and the promise of sweets. The cell block chief himself attends, the highest-ranking officer on the floor, whose unconscious body will guarantee chaos when the alarm finally sounds. The cake is cut. A ragged chorus of "Happy Birthday" echoes off concrete. Sobhraj plays humble, voice catching with rehearsed emotion. "Thank you, my friends, for these years together. I will never forget your kindness." Guards beam at one another. One claps Sobhraj on the shoulder like an old friend celebrating a milestone. The scene is surreal. Armed law enforcement celebrating a serial killer's birthday inside maximum security. No one notices the accomplice inmates watching from the corner, eyes fixed on Sobhraj, waiting for a signal. Sobhraj lifts the gilded box and offers burfi personally to each man, moving around the cell like a gracious host. "Extra special," he murmurs. "Imported from Jaipur, the best sweet shop in Rajasthan." The sweets are dense with ghee and saffron, each one laced with enough sedative to flatten a grown man in minutes. Guards devour them without hesitation. Prison food is monotonous, and quality sweets are rare luxuries. One officer snatches a second piece before anyone else can claim it, doubling his dose without knowing. Sobhraj glances at the wall clock as he sets down the empty box. 5:12 p.m. Shift change at 5:45. He needs every guard unconscious before fresh officers arrive and discover the carnage. For 2 minutes, nothing seems wrong. Conversation continues. Tea is poured. A guard tells a joke that gets scattered laughs. Then a senior officer pauses mid-sentence, blinking rapidly as if trying to focus on something just out of reach. Sweat beads on his forehead. Another man's teacup clatters to the floor. "I don't feel," he starts, then crumples against the wall like a marionette with cut strings. The collapse cascades through the room. Guards stagger, grab for furniture, clutch their heads. One reaches for his radio, but his fingers won't close around it. The 2 sentries in the corridor rush in to help their fallen colleagues, and succumb within seconds, the drugs already circulating through their bloodstreams from the sweets they'd sampled earlier. In under 5 minutes, 7 officers lie sprawled across the floor, breathing but unconscious. The highest security prison in India has been neutralized by desert. Sobhraj moves fast. He steps over a twitching guard, bends down, and unclips the master keyring from the man's belt. An accomplice lets out a whoop of triumph, and Sobhraj silences him with a glare sharp enough to cut glass. Celebration comes later, or never, depending on the next 30 minutes. They drag unconscious bodies out of the doorway, positioning them against the walls. Then, Sobhraj performs the final theatrical flourish. He locks all 7 guards inside his own cell, the prisoner caging his jailers. The reversal is almost poetic, but there's no time to savor it. He leads 6 men down the corridor at a deliberate, casual pace. Running draws attention. Panic draws bullets. They walk like trustees returning from an errand, nodding at a drowsy sentry who barely glances up from his newspaper, passing a clerk too focused on paperwork to notice anything unusual. Shift change is minutes away. At the final checkpoint, a guard sits behind reinforced glass with his hand near a panic button. Sobhraj approaches with an easy smile. "Errand for the warden's office," he says in fluent Hindi. The guard hesitates. Something feels off, but Sobhraj's face is familiar from years of model behavior. The guard buzzes them through. "Back in a minute," Sobhraj calls cheerfully as the heavy steel gate swings open. It clangs shut behind them with a sound like a coffin closing. Outside, Delhi evening air fills his lungs for the first time in a decade. The white ambassador waits exactly where promised. Engine idling, driver gripping the wheel. Sobhraj ushers his accomplices inside and slides into the back seat. The driver pulls into traffic before the sun touches the horizon. Behind them, Tihar sits quiet, oblivious. Inside Block B, 7 guards will sleep for hours before anyone discovers the locked cell and the missing inmates. The accomplices tremble with adrenaline, giddy at their impossible luck. Sobhraj offers only a thin smile. They expect him to celebrate, to reveal the border crossing, to plot their new lives. Instead, the car heads south, toward Goa, a tourist paradise 1,200 kilometers away, crawling with police, foreigners, and journalists. Every mile brings Sobhraj closer to exactly the kind of attention a fugitive should avoid. His companions don't realize they're riding into a trap that only one person in the car understands. What happens when India's entire law enforcement apparatus starts hunting the most infamous killer on the subcontinent? And why would a man smart enough to escape Tihar choose a beach restaurant as his hiding spot? The drugged guards wake at dusk, disoriented and utterly humiliated. They find themselves locked inside a prisoner's cell, their radios out of reach, their dignity in ruins. The alarm klaxon screams through Tihar within minutes, echoing across the prison complex like an accusation. By midnight, an all-India alert floods every airport, seaport, train station, and border crossing from Kashmir to Kerala. The bikini killer has escaped. Police roadblocks sprout on every highway out of Delhi. Armed officers stop cars, check trunks, interrogate drivers. Interpol issues a red notice flagging every international transit point. Newspapers run screaming headlines. Serial killer drugs guards with birthday cake. Strolls out front gate. The public oscillates between terror at a murderer on the loose and grudging admiration at the sheer audacity of the scheme. Sobhraj's legend swells into dark mythology. Days pass with no sign of Sobhraj or his crew. Rumors swirl through police stations and newsrooms. He crossed into Nepal through a mountain pass, boarded a cargo ship in Mumbai harbor, bribed his way onto a private plane. Thai officials send furious cables demanding answers. Indian police sweat through sleepless nights, careers hanging by threads. And while every detective combs shadows and borders, Charles Sobhraj sits in a wicker chair at Okokero restaurant in Goa, eating prawn curry by a window that faces the street. No disguise, no alias. His signature cap and sunglasses are visible to anyone who glances inside. He reads a newspaper, one with his own face on the front page. April 6, 1986. His actual birthday, 3 weeks after the escape, finds him chatting with European tourists at a neighboring table, charming as if he's a businessman on holiday rather than the most wanted man on the subcontinent. A tip reaches local Inspector Madhukar Zende, someone matching Sobhraj's description at a beachside restaurant. Zende drives there half expecting another hoax, the 100th false sighting this week. Instead, he spots the unmistakable profile through the glass, backlit by afternoon sun. Heart pounding, Zende pushes through the door and approaches the table. "You are Charles Sobhraj. You are under arrest." The restaurant freezes. Diners hold their breath. Sobhraj looks up from his curry, meets the inspector's eyes, and smiles with genuine warmth. His wrists extend before Zende even reaches for handcuffs. "Happy birthday to me, Inspector!" 3 weeks after the most audacious prison break in Indian history, the Serpent is back in custody, caught in a tourist restaurant, making no effort to flee. Authorities are relieved but baffled. Why would a genius escape artist loiter in plain sight? Hidden loot? A rendezvous gone wrong? A mental breakdown? They interrogate Sobhraj for hours, and he answers with the smugness of a chess player explaining checkmate. He never intended to stay free. The escape was theater, every moment calculated for maximum legal entanglement. By breaking out, drugging officials, evading police for weeks, and finally getting recaptured, he guaranteed fresh felony charges. Crimes committed on Indian soil, prosecuted in Indian courts. Those trials would take years. Years he'd spend safely in Tihar while Thailand's 20-year statute of limitations ticked toward zero. Every headline, every roadblock, every humiliated guard added weight to his case file and months to his sentence. He didn't escape prison. He escaped extradition by forcing India to keep him locked up longer. Officials stare in disbelief. The scheme is so brazen it barely sounds legal, except that's exactly the point. Sobhraj exploited loopholes no lawmaker imagined. Indian courts convict him of prison escape and drugging government officers. The sentence, 10 additional years. Legal delays push his release to 1997, 2 years past the expiration of Thailand's murder warrants. What will Thai authorities do when they realize their case evaporated while Sobhraj sat comfortably in Indian custody? And does Sobhraj have any idea that his freedom in 1997 won't be the end of the story? Tihar welcomes Sobhraj back with a different energy. Guards no longer accept his gifts or share his jokes. Fellow inmates whisper about the man who played four-dimensional chess with 2 governments and won. But Sobhraj shows no resentment at the changed atmosphere. To him, these extra years are a protective cocoon, not punishment. He reads philosophy, exercises in the yard, grants sly interviews that burnish his legend without admitting guilt. Reporters arrive from 3 continents. Every story feeds the myth of the unkillable serpent, the criminal mastermind who drugged his way out of India's most secure prison and got recaptured on purpose. The restaurant in Goa installs a commemorative plaque at the table where he was arrested, a tourist attraction born from a serial killer's hubris. Thailand watches helplessly. Their extradition request sits in bureaucratic limbo as months become years. By 1995, the statute of limitations on the earliest murders expires. By 1997, every charge dissolves into legal vapor. Thai prosecutors, once hungry for a death sentence, closed their files and slid them into archives. They lost a game they didn't know had started until it was already over. In February 1997, Charles Sobhraj walks out of Tihar's gates, 52 years old and genuinely free. The Thai warrant is worthless paper. He boards a plane to Paris, cameras flashing at the departure gate, and lands in France, a citizen protected by laws that forbid extraditing nationals for crimes now erased by time. He signs book deals. Film producers circle with contract offers. Journalists buy him espresso in Montmartre cafes while he recounts capers that left bodies across 2 continents. He transformed capture into victory, prison into sanctuary, and an escape into a life sentence he actually wanted. But hubris has a longer memory than statutes, and Sobhraj never learned when to quit while ahead. In 2003, Sobhraj makes a decision that baffles everyone who followed his story. He flies to Nepal, a country that never forgot the 2 Western tourists found murdered in Kathmandu in December 1975. Connie Jo Bronzich, a 29-year-old American, and Laurent Carrière, a 26-year-old Canadian, both strangled in circumstances bearing Sobhraj's signature. Nepali law carries no statute of limitations on homicide. The case remains open, the evidence preserved. Why would a man who spent 11 years engineering his own imprisonment to avoid extradition voluntarily enter another country that still wants him for murder? Some speculate arrogance, the belief that he'd escaped justice so many times that luck had become skill. The answer may be simpler. Charles Sobhraj never learned to quit while ahead. Within weeks of arriving, a journalist recognizes him at a Kathmandu casino. Police surround the building. This time there's no elaborate scheme, no sedative-laced suites, no 4-dimensional chess. Just an old man caught in a country that never stopped wanting justice. Nepali courts convict him of murder in 2004. The sentence, life imprisonment. Appeals fail. For nearly 2 decades, the serpent sits in Kathmandu's central jail, not as a king with bribed guards and feather pillows, but as a frail, aging inmate suffering heart disease and fading eyesight. In December 2023, at 78, Nepal releases him on humanitarian grounds, a dying man no longer worth the cost of incarceration. He returns to France in a wheelchair, body broken, legend hollow. The escape artist who outwitted Thailand and manipulated India couldn't resist one final gamble. Nepal's patience outlasted his luck. His story proves something uncomfortable. Brilliance without conscience devours itself. Every scheme, every drugged victim, every courtroom manipulation led him back to a prison cell. If you want to see another criminal who believed he could outthink entire governments, watch our video on the Japanese who escaped 4 prisons in the most clever ways possible. That link is on your screen now. Because the smartest criminals always share the same flaw. They never know when to stop.